Hi, I go by Newt. I'm the administrator of the new non-binary gender resource blog called Life Outside the Binary. And I've been looking to get people to kind of share their stories and gender experiences and stuff like that to sort of, give a reference point to people who are trying to figure stuff out and trying to come out as transgender or non-binary. I figured I'd sort of contribute to the conversation by making a video about my own gender experience. I'm just going to be answering some questions that I get about my gender and about my experience as a trans person. The question I get most of the time is, what do I identify as? I use a few different words to describe myself. The word that I use most often is androgyne, which comes from the word androgynous, andro being Latin for man and gene being Latin for woman. The identity of androgyne generally fits into a mixed gender category for people who have both masculine and feminine characteristics. So the other word that I often use to describe myself is agender. I do feel like I possess both masculine and feminine characteristics, but I feel like that's more because of the way society assigns gender to characteristics more than it is me possessing two simultaneously occurring binary genders. Most of the time, in gendered situations, I find myself experiencing the thought, like, I don't have a gender, so I identify as agender as well as androgyne, because I feel like androgyne better describes my presentation or the way other people perceive me. The other word that I recently discovered was neutois, which is a French word meaning someone who is gender neutral, and it generally is used to refer to people who are agender and also physically transitioning or going through some sort of hormonal or surgery process to make themselves more physically neutral as far as gender presentation. The pronouns that I use, my most preferred one is Z, them. So like, Z went to the store and got themself a candy bar kind of thing. It's a non-traditional pronoun made for non-binary people, and I prefer it to they just because I feel like they is to default and is sort of used when you're not sure of someone's gender, whereas Z sort of implies an independent identity separate from the traditional genders, male and female. I also use they pronouns, and for a lot of social reasons I use he pronouns. Like within my relationship, I am a boyfriend, I am a fiance. I use male pronouns with my family and in a lot of social situations just because a lot of the time explaining non-binary genders is too difficult and too inconvenient, and I don't think that a lot of people would be receptive to it. So I am transmasculine for a lot of application purposes, just being someone who is assigned female at birth and identifies as something and is transitioning to something other than female. I get lumped into a transmasculine category a lot of the time, although I don't identify as transmasculine within myself. I find that role more comfortable and more convenient out of the two options because I am quite dysphoric. Moving on to another question that people ask me, do I experience dysphoria, or what type of dysphoria do I experience? Dysphoria comes in two categories: physical dysphoria and social dysphoria. Physical dysphoria being uncomfortable with your physical self, with your physical sex presentation, stuff like that, like what sex people perceive you as, whereas social dysphoria is more tied to how people treat you in regards to your gender, so treating you as a female when you feel like you should be treated as a male, or stuff like that. I feel like I experience both types of dysphoria because I am quite uncomfortable with like certain physical aspects of my body, as well as being treated in certain gendered ways. I have much stronger dysphoria towards female things than I do to male things. Being gendered as female is quite triggering, I guess you would say, for me, and it's quite upsetting, and it can make me have like anxiety problems and stuff like that in social situations if I feel like people are going to be perceiving me as female. Being perceived as male is not completely comfortable for me, but like I said before, in the world in which we live, we only get two choices, so out of the two, male is what I'm much more comfortable with. Although I am ideally most comfortable in a situation where I don't have to have any binary gender and people know that I'm androgynous and they use Z or they pronouns. Another question I get is, what images of gender do I relate to? Sort of what role models do I have, I guess. I don't really feel like I look up to any gender role examples or anything like that, and I actually feel like it's made it quite difficult for me to relate to people in my life. I don't relate to wanting to be in a female role, and I don't relate to wanting to be in a male role. The images of gender that I have identified with most throughout my childhood and adolescence were generally gay men, actually. Like, I remember as a child, I much more related to animals as identifiers. I would go through phases of identifying with different animals as a means of expressing myself, and then once I got older, I got really into music, and once I got into music, I discovered more feminine or ambiguous masculine presentations, and I was really attracted to that as a possibility for myself. I remember when I was about 13, I was in love with the band Queen, and I was in love with Freddie Mercury as an idea, and I really wanted to be just like Freddie Mercury, and I wanted to, you know, sing on stage in the tight pants and stuff like that, but it wasn't something that I saw achievable at that age because I thought, like, I'm female, and so I should be experiencing femininity in sort of a female way, and I didn't feel like the kind of femininity I was experiencing was really female-centered, if that makes sense. I remember when I first started liking boys, the thought occurred to me that I liked them in kind of a gay way, until I got exposure to the trans community that wasn't a feeling that I could really articulate. I remember having thoughts of feeling like I had been like a gay man in a past life, or had been some sort of like really effeminate male person, or like that's what I was in some way, because those were the only real examples of gender expression that appealed to me. And then the other question that often comes up relating to that is, what if you were born male? The first response I get from people usually when I tell them that I'm trans is, oh, so you wish you were born male, or you're trying to become male, or you feel like a man trapped in a female body, or something like that. No, none of those. No. Because I feel like if I had been born in a male body, I feel like I would be the exact opposite as I am now. I feel like my gender presentation a lot of the time is sort of seeking equilibrium, and I feel like if I had been born in a male body, I would be the opposite. I would be feminine, I would want to be wearing dresses, I would like hate the masculine aspects of my body. So there's kind of this misconception with a lot of trans people that trans people want to be cis, or trans people want to be, you know, just like having the body that their gender identifies with, but I don't feel like my gender identity really matches with either biological sex option. Theoretically, like, I could have been born intersex, I guess, and I actually got kind of fixated for a while with the idea of being intersex, because for some reason, as soon as I heard about it, I thought, like, maybe that's me, like, maybe that explains why I don't feel like a boy or a girl or a man or a woman or whatever. So I heavily researched intersex conditions and stuff like that, and I was just absolutely convinced that that had to be what it is, because even my parents said that when I was much younger, parts of my body formed in very distinctly masculine ways, and so the doctor that I was seeing was worried that I might have some sort of intersex condition, so I had to go get a bunch of ultrasounds to make sure that I had the right internal organs and stuff like that. But after getting tested for it, I'm totally biologically normal for someone who was assigned female at birth. So I'm definitely not intersex, and I don't think that it's really within my privilege to say that I wish I was intersex, because I feel like intersex conditions come with a lot of health problems and stuff like that. And for me, even though I feel like I would physically identify with some sort of in-between sex, I don't think that me as a non-intersex person can really say I wish I was intersex, because I'm speaking from the perspective of not having any understanding of the struggles that intersex people go through. So yeah, I just feel like I probably would have wound up in some sort of middle area gender-wise no matter what I was born as. The other thing people ask me is, how do you know you were trans? I feel like I definitely knew I was non-binary. At the time, the first word that I identified with was genderqueer, because it was the first word that I was presented. I'd always felt like I didn't fit in with girls, and I mean, a lot of people say that, like, everybody's a bit different and everybody has a hard time fitting in and stuff like that. But it was kind of a more profound feeling when I would be with a group of girls. I had a lot of very rewarding friendships with girls and stuff like that, but whenever I was in a group with them, it was just kind of this feeling like these people aren't me, or I'm not this. And it wasn't a particularly uncomfortable feeling, but it was just an acknowledgement. And I remember feeling that like that my whole life, where if I was in a group of girls, I would just have the feeling like, oh, these people are cool, but they're not like me. And I would also feel the same way with guys. A lot of people know that they're trans because they strongly identify with one gender over the other. And I have just not really felt in tune with any gender as a group or as a unit, really. There are other times when I'm in a social group of all males, and I'm able to chameleon pretty well. Like, I know how to socialize in a group of girls or in a group of guys, and I'm not really uncomfortable that way, but I am aware whenever I'm in a group of one gender of people that I am sort of an outsider in some senses, just because I don't quite think the same way that they do, I guess. So that's why genderqueer resonated with me. And then as soon as I discovered genderqueer, like, the idea of appearing physically androgynous had always appealed to me. Like, the idea that you could look in a way that people didn't know if you were a boy or a girl, yeah, that had always appealed to me, and I'd always wanted to look that way. And so once the idea of being genderqueer was presented to me, like, I wanted to get a binder, I wanted to start flattening my chest, I wanted to start dressing in a more ambiguous or masculine way. And I tried to express this to some of my friends and family, and it didn't really go over well at the time, because there's not really a lot of exposure for non-binary or genderqueer identities, and so, and it's really just something that's coming to light now with the internet and with people having more access to information and having more access to, like, sort of exploring their own identities and seeing what kind of things resonate with them. There's a lot more genderqueer people coming out now, and so I think a lot of the problems that people are going to have is they're going to talk to their parents, and their parents are going to be like, oh, that Tumblr thing. They're going to think that just because you were exposed to something on the internet that you are a product of your society any more than they are, or that you are somehow under some sort of social influence to disregard binary gender. And I feel like that was a lot of the reception that I got when I first told people this. Well, I mean, my friends were less surprised, because my friends described me as being very switchy. Like, I would be very masculine one day and very feminine the next day, and it just kind of depended on how I felt. My parents, however, were very like, you're feminine, you've been feminine your whole life, like, we know who you are, kind of thing. So they were very unreceptive to it. And it kind of made me question how certain I was about what I was experiencing, because I thought, like, I know I'm uncomfortable with the way I look. I know what I want to look like I have an idea in my head of what I want to look like, and it's not how I do look, but everyone's telling me that non-binary people don't experience dysphoria, non-binary people can't or don't transition, like, non-binary people aren't trans, or just a whole bunch of other bullshit that I heard people say. So I kind of started questioning it, and I was like, well, I know I feel this way, and people are telling me that I can't feel this way and be non-binary. So I started exploring identifying as just completely male. Like, I had expressed feeling genderqueer and wanting to use they pronouns to my parents, and they actually reacted quite angrily about it. I don't really know why, but they were very unreceptive to that, and so I wound up coming out to my parents as trans male about a year and a few months ago. And that caused a lot of problems as far as just my family dynamic and my relationship with my parents and stuff like that. But it was something that was easier for them to comprehend, so I just went with that because I didn't want to have to explain my gender and what I was really experiencing to anyone, and I just wanted to get to a point where people weren't referring to me as female, and even if I'm not completely comfortable being ID'd as male, it is more comfortable, so it's sort of picking the lesser of two evils, I guess. To my parents, although I've expressed feelings of androgyny and non-binary gender and stuff like that, over the course of exploring my gender identity, I'm pretty sure they just think of me as being, like, trans male. So there was a while there where I was just IDing as a feminine trans guy, and I thought, like, I'm just gonna be, like, a really fabulous gay guy and stuff like that, and it's not gonna matter, like, I can look completely androgynous and identify as male and stuff like that. But after doing the male thing for a few months, it started to wear on me a little bit too, and I kept expressing feelings that, like, I'm agender, but I'm just living as male, and I started realizing that male was not neutral, because when I was told I couldn't be genderqueer, my first reaction was like, okay, well then I must be male, and I can probably just make male into whatever I need it to be. I can make male be neutral if I want it to. But once you start entering into a male role in society, you realize that it is kind of equal and opposite to the female experience. It is another gender. It is very restrictive as far as the social cues and what you're sort of allowed to do as a man. And so after experiencing that for a few months, I realized that that was not what I wanted to be and not what I was either. And so I just started identifying as non-binary again, and most people were pretty okay with that. I mean, my friends know me pretty well, like, they know the kind of thing that I'm into, so me switching back and forth between different identifiers, like, it hasn't really changed anything. It's just how, like, the words that I'm using to express myself, but myself has not actually changed very much. Yeah, so I live as completely non-binary in my head and to my friends, but to my family and to people who explaining transgender at all is complicated, I just go with trans masculine or trans guy or whatever, just because I need to get away from the female misgendering more than I need to get away from the male misgendering, and if I'm only allowed to pick two options, I'm probably gonna pick male. Unfortunately. I mean, I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about the way the world is and the fact that non-binary people will always, well, hopefully not always, but currently are always forced into picking box A or box B. I feel it's very limiting. I feel it's damaging to a lot of people whose personalities and identities just can't fit into a box like myself. And so, yeah, I'm not exactly happy with the fact that I always have to choose between identifying as a man or a woman, but hopefully through, you know, advocacy work and stuff like that, I know non-binary genders are really pushing for petitions and for government recognition and stuff like that, and that's huge, and I really think that in our lifetime we're going to see a lot more gender equality as far as not forcing people to be one or the other. I really hope that's something that I see in my lifetime, where I can walk down the street and have someone see me and not have them say, "Are you a man or a woman?" but just know that I'm not. About transition. A lot of people ask me, are you transitioning, or what are your transition goals? Because It's thought that a lot of non-binary people don't transition or don't need to transition or don't want to transition because if you're not transitioning from point A to point Z, then where are you going? Even though there's 25 other letters. I have been taking testosterone. I took about 5 months of FTM dose testosterone, which would be about 200 milligrams a month. I'm not taking testosterone right now just because I had to get shoulder surgery to plate the clavicle on my right side, and the surgeon told me that testosterone can make your bones really hard, so I had to stop testosterone for the few months that I'm healing. I plan on going back on testosterone on a low dose, so probably 50 to 100 milligrams a month, just because I really like the way my body feels when there's testosterone in it. I feel more myself, I feel more confident, I feel just more at home and having a better relationship with my body, but I don't really want all the physical changes that trans guys want. And that was one of my problems when I was trying to figure out what my gender identity was, is that I knew that I identified with trans men in that I experienced the same dysphoria as them. I didn't want to have breasts, I didn't want to have hips, I didn't want this or that or the other thing, but I didn't empathize with their goals. I didn't want a beard. I didn't want to look like a man, like man face. I didn't want to look distinctively masculine. I just wanted to look indistinctively anything. I didn't want to look distinctive. So after doing a lot more research myself and finding a few Nutois blogs of people tracking their transitions as non-binary, it's made it a lot easier for me to accept that that's what I am and to accept that I don't have to be binary in order to be trans or transsexual. I like experiencing the slight masculinizations. Like, I like that it's made my voice lower. I like that it's made my neck more masculine. You can see I have a bit of an Adam's apple there. It's made my face more masculine. It's made me have a little bit more body hair, and I like the body hair, I just don't really like the facial hair. And as far as surgeries and stuff like that, I am planning on getting top surgery. I'm not sure if I'm going to be waiting for the government to fund that, because in Ontario you can get it funded through CAMH if you want to wait like 2 years to get that done. But I'm at a point with my dysphoria where I don't know if I can wait because it's causing me a lot of distress and anxiety around my chest. So I'm thinking that I might wind up having to somehow save up the money to pay for the surgery myself. As far as my transition, I feel like hormonally I'm probably about 50% or over 50% in how far I'm going to go. I'd like to stay on testosterone for as long as possible just because I like having it in my body and I like the way it makes me feel, but I feel like I'm really gonna probably try to find my break-even dose where I can have it and feel the effects of it, but not really be experiencing that much more transitional effects. I mean, my face could masculinize a little bit more, my voice could get a bit deeper, I wouldn't care, but I don't want to look distinctively male, and that was my goal when I was seeking out testosterone. I was out as male to most people at that time, but the whole time that I was seeking hormones, I knew that at some point I was going to have to stop. I knew that my transition wasn't going to look like what a normal trans man's transition looks like, and that was really difficult for me to accept because I didn't see any representation for people like me, I didn't see any resources for people like me. I thought that I was a freak, or I was somehow like some sort of like mutation or something like that, and the way I experienced gender just wasn't normal and wasn't okay, but I've really come into accepting myself and accepting my gender ambiguity. So as far as body goals, I'd really like to look kind of effeminately masculine, I would say. Like, I want to be like skinny and have a flat chest and just kind of look like a twink. To be honest. Once I have top surgery, I feel like that'll actually probably alleviate most of the dysphoria that I'm experiencing, and I'm not gonna go that much farther with the hormone therapy. So yeah, that's just where I'm at with my body and my body goals and stuff like that. I feel like I've probably been talking for a very long time now. What I'd like to leave with, though, is that I am in a position right now where I'm pretty confident with who I am, what I want, and where I'm going. But I just wanted to say that it takes a long time. And it takes a lot of self-exploration and introspection and talking to other people and sharing experiences and learning and research, and it takes a lot to get to a place where you know who you are and what you want, especially if who you are and what you want is not one of the two boxes that you get. So, if anyone's listening to me and they just think that I've got my shit together and they just think that I've always known that I was trans or that I've always known what I am and what I want to be, that's not true. And it took me a very long time to figure out what I was, and more so to be comfortable with what I was, because I think looking back, I always knew that I wasn't a boy or a girl, but it took a much longer time for me to really accept the reality of that and really come to terms with that as being my personal reality. So yeah, just if you're in a place right now where you don't really know who you are or what to identify as or what to call yourself, that's okay. And it takes people a long time to figure that out. And if you see people who are older than you or who have been out for longer than you and you think that they've got their shit together, it's just because they're finished going through everything that you're going through right now. So with that, I'm gonna sign off.